Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. The first thing I'm going to do today is to show you two instruments. This first one is a thumb harp, and the second one I'm going to show you in a few minutes is another thumb harp. Now, there's not much difference between them. This is brand new. I've had it for maybe a week or two, and that's all. I took somebody to the hospital for an appointment that they had, and I went into the store, the little gift shop, and there it was. They had several of them, and this one was reasonably priced, and I thought very nice. I would like to compare the two and talk to you about thumb harps. I'd never seen one in all my years as a musician until fairly recently, and when I bought this one here. This is an older one. Now you're going to notice they just call these keys in the literature that they've read. They don't have a special name for these little metal pieces, but they're all geared to play when you strike them a certain tone. And they have a little kind of a metal strip here, and it's got a couple of screws in it. And if I turn it around on the other side, there are the screws on the side. You can adjust these. This is in the key of C, however, and it's got 8 keys to it. However, you can rearrange the keys and screw them in a different way, and it'll play in the key of G, so I've been told. I've never done that because I want to keep it more or less as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it. This is going to be hard to show you because there's no way that you can show that I can turn around and show you from the back. But when you hold it between two hands, and the left hand plays the keys on the left and the right hand plays the keys on the right, although to you I understand it's going to look reversed. So you just hold it up. I want to tell you also there's another name for it. It's called a kalimba. And a kalimba, they were kind of designed in Africa years and years ago. So these instruments are like from antiquity, just like the ocarinas are. Many of them are from antiquity too, but this is a kalimba or thumb harp. And so I'm just going to, if you play it, I wish there was an easy way to show you. You play one key, and then the next over here, and over here. You know, you just keep alternating. So let me do it, and I'm going to kind of put it in my lap. Well, maybe I'll hold it up. Let me try it again. There. That's the key of C. And what you do is you alternate your fingers. You press down the lowest one or the largest one. That's going to be the root note. And that's going to be this one right here. In order to do it, you just put your finger on it. And basically, you're playing, it's a thumb harp. So you're going to be putting your thumb on it. And you just slide the thumb off. Now, of course, to show you, it's hard to show you that, but now you notice one of these that doesn't have the best tone. I'll explain to you why in a few minutes. Now this is in the key of C. Now this new one has got smaller keys and more of them. There are 11 keys in here, and as I've checked it out, I really think it's in the key of B flat. And because the root note, which is the longest key, which is right here, is going to be in B flat. And the couple on the end, that doesn't seem to have much to do with anything. So you hold it in your hands, you use your thumbs to play it with, just your thumbs, not your other fingers, and you hold it up. That's the whole scale. They're very, very popular in some places. They're not very loud. I hope you can hear the tones that I played, but I can't be sure that you did because I'm listening to it from my perspective. I don't know what the sound people are picking up. But you can play different songs on it. And what came with this new one is this little brochure. It shows a picture of it over here. And then it shows you how you put your fingers. And then on the back side, it has fingerings for little songs, like Mary Had a Little Lamb, these children's ditties you can play on it. I'm impressed with the quality of the sound. I'm impressed with the way that it plays so well. But it's not going to be loud, and if you're going to bring it into an orchestra or something, you're not going to hear it unless there's a microphone on it. But people like to play it. Now, I got to tell you, it's very hard on your thumbs. If you're not used to playing it, it's almost like you have to develop calluses for it like a guitar would. It gets so your thumbs can be pretty sore. But this is what it is. You can loosen the screws in the back. You can loosen them up. You can alternate. You can change things around a little and get it to play in more than one key. But it does have a remarkable sound. And it's very pretty. It is an actual instrument. This is not a toy. And I noticed that when I saw and looked at the prices of them, they can go up to over $100 for a really nice one. And they can be made in as many as 15 keys. I have 11 keys on the larger one, and I have 8 keys on the smaller ones. But they can go up to over $100 to play them, and they can have, as I said before, 15 keys. So what would be the purpose of having it? It's just a nice little thing. It's a thing to play on your own. It's a thing that has a really nice, gentle sound, and a lot of people just really like them. And if you wanted to record something from it, it would sound very nice, because you can play more than one key at a time. You can play as many as 2 keys at a time. Just use your 2 thumbs so you can get things in harmony with it. And so if you think about Christmas time, sometimes you get a recording, and sometimes it'll start off with something soft, and they may be using a thumb harp for that, an expensive thumb harp. This was not terribly expensive, but it was expensive enough for me, and for what I use out of it and teach from it, it's good, you know. It's a good quality. So that's my latest thumb harp. Now, as I've said before, we read music like we read a book. We use the symbols. So what I decided to do was to teach you how to read rests. You know, a rest is a period of time in a piece of music where you don't play. Other people may be playing, but you're silent while the other people are playing, and then you come in and play again at the appropriate time. And I haven't spent much time talking about the symbols for the rest, but I'm going to do that today on this chart right here. I'll move this over a little. Whoops. I want to have you be able to see it well, so let me move it right here, as long as it doesn't fall over. These, I have got notes, and I've got symbols for those notes if you're resting. And I only use the more common ones, but say you're playing a note here, that's a whole note. A whole note is just by itself, it's just a circle with nothing in it. And then, but if you want, say it's 4 beats, because a lot of times it is. It can be other number of beats. It's whatever the music calls for in terms of time. If you have 4/4 time, 4 beats to a measure, then that's going to be 4 beats. If you have 3/4 time, 3 beats to a measure, then this would be worth 3 beats. So let's say, just for example, if this is a 4-beat note and you play it, this is a 4-beat rest. if you have a rest there, that's the one rest for the entire measure. Its worth as a rest is as much as the worth would be if it was a note. So if it's 4/4 time, you're resting the whole measure, and this is the only symbol for that measure, just like this is the only note. If you're playing, this is the only note of the measure. This would be the only rest for the measure, and there would be just one. And you hold it for 4 beats. Now, you would be counting in your head. You wouldn't be counting out loud if you're in a group that's playing, but you'd count 1, 2, 3, 4 in your head. Now, what about the half notes? Half notes, I've written 2 of them here because you can write half notes 2 ways, with the stem to the left or the stem to the right. You can have that either way, but it's still a half beat, and that's usually 2 beats to the measure. There are times when it's different, depending upon the key signature and depending upon the time signature. There are times when it's different, but for now we're going to assume the traditional 2 beats. So what's a 2-beat rest? It's this right here. And you would have 2 of them to the measure if you want to count 2. Or if you only want to have 1 note rested, then there would be just 1. But the difference is it's popping up from the 3rd line, 1, 2, 3. And on the whole beat, it's on the 4th line, 1, 2, 3, 4. You count those lines of the staff, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines to the staff. If a little jut, like a little, almost like a rectangular form, is hanging down from the 4th line, then you know that it's going to be a whole rest, and it's going to be worth whatever a note would be if a note was there. And then for the half, it's kind of jutting up, the same kind of symbol, but it's on the 3rd line and it's pointing up. The whole note is on the 4th line pointing down. The half is on the 3rd line pointing up, and that would be worth 2 beats. So there would be 2 beats when you would be resting and not playing. This is the quarter note. A quarter note is usually worth 1 beat. It's blackened in, and it has its stem. There's no flags to it, and this is the symbol for the quarter rest. So if you see that, you know you're resting for 1 beat. And then down here, this is the 8th note. The 8th note has the body, it has a stem and 1 flag. And this is a symbol for the 8th rest. It just is 1 line. It's like it's a little flag with 1 line down. That's the way it looks. That's for an 8th note rest. This is a 16th note. The 16th note has a blackened body, and then its stem, and then it has 2 lines. So on the 16th note, you have 2 little flags on it. The rest also has 2 little flags on it. The 8th note has 1 little flag. The 16th rest has 2 little flags. And then you go on from there. Now, we won't get into this here, but if you had a 32nd rest, you would have 3 flags on that note, and there would be 3 flags on that rest. So that's a 32nd rest. And then you could have the 64th notes. This would be 4 flags to the note, and for the rest, 4 flags. So you can easily read what those rests are. We won't get any further than 16th notes. 16th notes are pretty fast, but you don't see so much, except in professional music and dance music where they do a lot of unusual things. This is going to be the 32nd rest note, and this is going to be the 32nd flagged rest, and this is going to be the 64th note and the 64th rest. We won't be doing any more than that, but I'd be interested in your knowing, as soon as you see a little rectangle kind of hanging down from the 4th bar, then you know you've got a whole rest, and if you see it on the 3rd bar pointing up, then you've got a half rest. This is a quarter rest, an 8th rest, and a 16th rest. And this is as far as we will go in this class. But you need to know how to count your rests because they're important. They're just as important as anything else. I knew a girl who, when she was playing in a little kind of a group, we were playing in a rest home, she wanted the music to go faster. I don't know what she was thinking. She just decided to skip the rests and play the notes, which threw everybody off, and it sounded terrible because that's not the way the music is written. The rests are important. They're there for a purpose. Sometimes you need to have a little break before phrases and so forth to make it sound good, and so you need to have the rest. And nobody plays all the time. If you're in a group or an orchestra, you play and then somebody else plays, and there are periods of time in the music where you see rests, and some music has quite a bit of rest, so you have to count those, just like you count notes. So anyway, I'm going to take this down for now, and I'm going to play another song. It's going to be this song here. This is kind of like a march, and what I've got are triplets and dotted eighths and sixteenths, and I need to go over those, but I wrote them in a song. I don't have too much time here left, but let me start out, and then I'm going to show you some things about this. This is something that I just wrote. But it would go, I'm not going to play it too fast, but it would go fast if you wanted it to, because then, you know, marches are not slow. Some of them are, but most of them are pretty fast. So let me try this, we'll see how it goes. And that's the whole song. So let me dissect it for you. And we'll look at this, and I'll show you what you are looking for and what you need to be looking for in a piece of music. This is just a short march that I wrote to show you the various ways that time is written. So you have your treble clef right here, and that's the clef that most woodwinds play in. So you know this is not a bass clef song. And the time signature is 4/4, which means there are 4 beats to every measure, and that this 4 is like the type of note. The quarter note is equal to 1 beat. And this here, you start off with a triplet. Now, this is a group of notes. It is a triplet before the main song begins. It is a part of the song, but the way I've written it, this becomes the introduction. This is the first measure, but this is the introduction. It's not a full measure, it's part of a measure, and this starts the song. So also I want to mention the key signature. It has an F sharp here, so that puts us in the key of G, of 1 sharp. I'll explain at some point how that works, but it does work. So here's your triplet, your 3/8 notes, and then a little curve over them, and the number 3 on top. And so therefore you know that it's going to be 3 notes to a beat. This would be, if I had the whole thing written out, this would be the 4th beat. It becomes the introduction. Then you have the dotted 8th, 16th, dotted 8th, 16th, quarter note, and triplets again. That gives you 4 beats to the measure. A dotted 8th and a 16th is 1 beat. This is the 2nd beat, dotted 8th and 16th. I've added a sharp. That sharp becomes an accidental because it's not in the key signature, but you play it as a sharp. The quarter note is a beat in itself. That's your 3rd beat. And then you have another set of triplets with the 3 in the curve. That's the 4th beat. Now that pattern is pretty much repeated throughout the song. And you'll find many songs in which things are repeated, and that's kind of a pattern for the song. So take the 2nd measure, 1 beat, dotted 8th and 16th, the 2nd beat, dotted 8th and 16th. This note now is flatted. That becomes an accidental, because a B flat is not written in the key signature, but you want to bring it back to the natural again, and so therefore you have to add that natural sign to take it off that flat so that it won't continue to be flat. Because when you have an accidental, you add a sharp or a flat that isn't in the key signature, it goes for the entire measure. It doesn't go on the measure, but it goes through the entire measure. So to get it back, you have to add another sign to bring it back, and that makes that note another accidental because it's different than the note that was before it. It's a quarter note, and then you have your curve, and your 3, and that's another triplet. So 1, 2, 3, accidental, but it's a quarter note, and then 4. And then on this beat here, here's your 8th and 16th, and so therefore dotted 8th and 16th, that's one beat. Your second beat, which has a G sharp in it, that's also an accidental because it's not in the key signature. Then a quarter note, which is the third note, and then another set of triplets. Now you notice here, I didn't put a curve. I just put the 3. Sometimes when musicians write that triplet, they don't always put the curve in. Some do and some don't. So I wanted to write it both ways so you would be able to see it. As long as that 3 is there, you know that it's a triplet, whether the curve is there or not. So you don't always have to have the curve to prove that it's a triplet. On this measure, here it is, 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats, triplets, and that's your little curve. These are the 8th notes, these are triplets, and then another dotted 8th and 16th, which makes for another beat. So this pattern is on and on and on throughout the entire piece. A lot of people use the dotted 8th and 16th because when you play it, it gives you kind of a rhythm. You're not just going like an 8th note. You're doing. So it adds a different rhythm to it, but it does have the same number of beats. It's just the way of writing it. So you need to know that. I'll be probably doing more work with that later. Okay, and so you get down here. Now, I slowed it down toward the end. Starting at about here. I didn't write a retard. I could have written a retard, but it's toward the end. You start slowing down at the end, and then you may repeat the last 2 or 3 measures. So, and I'm going to do that just so you can hear it. Let's see. I'm going to start like right here, and I'm going to start slowing down here, and then I'm going to repeat this. This is the same as a little bit what was written before it. I didn't put in a repeat sign. It was easier for me just to write it again. So when I get to a point, you'll just have to kind of hear it. See, I repeat. This I play, and this I play again, and I lengthen it and I slow it down, and that signals the end of the piece. I was more interested in having you see the difference between the triplets and the dotted and 8ths and 16ths as I was in writing out the other things, because what I could have done was write the retard. R-I-T period means retard. Now I want to show you something else. I'll have just about time enough to do that. This is in 4/4 time. Here you have 1 beat because they're triplets, and I make that into the introduction. An introduction is what you play before you really start a song. And even though this is a part of song, I make it into the introduction. And this note you'll see, is 3 beats. And now it has supposed to have 4 beats to a measure. This is 3 beats. It's a dotted half note. That makes it 3 beats. Half note is 2 beats. Add a dot and you add half of the value of that note, which is going to be 1 beat because half of the half is 1. And that together makes for 3 beats. So why don't I put in a 4th beat? I will count this as the 4th beat, even though I'm not playing it. So 1 beat up here and 3 beats down here makes for 4 beats, so it makes the song mathematically correct. Now, I could have done it a little different way. I could have added 3 beats. This would be the same as the introduction. I could have added and made 3 rests, 1, 2, 3. You see, this is your quarter rest and this is your half rest coming up from the third line. So it would be 1, 2, 3, and this is 4. So that's a complete measure. Part of it is used as the introduction, but it's a complete measure. If I did that, then it would be correct for me at the end to use a whole note for the end, or a dotted half and a note, which makes for 4 beats. Or I could just put a dotted half plus a rest. That would also make for 4 beats. I would make for 4 beats because I don't have anything to make up for, because there's 4 beats in the beginning. If I did it this way, there would be 4 beats in the beginning, so in the end, I would put 4 beats instead of 3. Where this is 1 beat, I can add it to this and make it a whole complete measure, even though it's split and I'm not playing this when I get down here. Or I could make this into a complete measure, and then I could use a whole note or any combination of notes and rests that would make for 4 beats. I would not be adding that to it, but it would be like a complete measure. So I'm going to close it here. That just gives you some of the technicalities. I don't think it makes that much difference. You wouldn't know the difference if I played it either way, but it's just in the interest of the mathematical correctness of the piece. So I'll close it here. We'll be doing something else next time. Please join me then.